Hello, and a warm welcome to everyone here at the Ekamra Sports Literature Festival, the first one ever to be held in Canada. I'm Teddy Katz. I spent 2 decades as a sports journalist at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation and covered many of the world's top sports events. A couple of months ago, I met with Sundeep Misra, a journalist from India. Sundeep has organized two highly successful versions of this festival in India. We met up in a social distance way in the middle of COVID-19 to see if we could produce the first of what we plan to be an annual Canadian International Ekamra Sports Literature Festival. I've always believed that some of the best writing happens in sport. You have the built-in drama, the adversity, not to mention incredible characters. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to showcase some of those stories and bring the festival to Canada. So here we are. I'd now like to welcome the festival director, Sundeep Misra. Sundeep, good morning, and tell us why you wanted to do this here in Canada.
Good morning, Teddy. Today is going to be very exciting. I'm really looking forward to this fest. I mean, I know we are going online, but this is absolutely terrific. I know you asked me the same question, why Canada, why Toronto, why Brampton or Mississauga, any of those cities. But, since we did the second edition, and since we finished it, we really wanted to move this across the world. And for me, I mean, when I was growing up, even in school and college, most of the authors and everybody in terms of sport I read belong to North America, and most of them from the US. And there's one question, a lot of people ask me, sports and literature, how do you define that? And I always have this answer for them, Ernest Hemingway moved boxing from the sports pages to the literary pages, and that's why the word literature and this whole push towards Sports Literature Festival. We wanted to organize this festival outdoors, and you know that you were a part of it, and then suddenly we decided online in the GTA, in the Greater Toronto area. But given the conditions, health became such an important thing. It is hugely important right now. So here we are online with this fest, and I hope this turns out to be a terrific day. We're going to welcome the mayor now. The mayor should be online right now. Good morning. Good morning, Patrick Brown, Mayor Brown. How are you?
Very good.
Okay, we just start off with a few questions for you, Mayor Brown. Brampton is investing a lot in terms of the sports infrastructure. And, back in the subcontinent, in India and across the world, you're known for the G20 and, how much of cricket is being pushed. I mean, leave alone cricket, a lot of other sport also. So why is sports so important to your community?
Well, sports is integral in Brampton because we have this beautiful community that is passionate about recreation, passionate about athletic pursuits. And if you look at the success of the GT20, people, had no idea how popular it was going to be. When I told people there'd be thousands of people, people were lined up to get tickets. There was 10, 15,000 people there for each match. And it shows that we've got this really exciting, dynamic sporting community.
We remember that, Mayor Brown, because in India, Yuvraj Singh had come over to play the last G20, who's like a major superstar out there.
I just saw him a few months ago in India. He told me he was looking forward to coming back.
Oh, wonderful. Mayor, for Brampton, for those who don't know, is one of the most diverse communities anywhere. Mayor Brown, how does that manifest itself in the type of sports people play in the community?
So we have 73% visible minorities in Brampton, which means that there's diversity to the athletic pursuits as well. And so cricket is popular, hockey, baseball, basketball, across the board. I think there's people that have lacrosse. People have a passion for a wide variety of athletic passions. But given how large the South Asian population is in Brampton, there's a special place for cricket, and it's why we're building this cricket stadium. It's why we just built the first outdoor fully lighted cricket pitch at the Terremoto Field. We're really investing in cricket infrastructure.
Mayor Brown, before we let you go, how important is it for you to have events like the one that we are having, the Ekamra Sports Literature Festival in the community? And do you, Mayor Brown, have a favorite sports book?
Well, I think it's good to share our stories. And that's why having a festival on sports literature is unique. And after all, sports is the pursuit of sporting excellence, but it's also celebrating those accomplishments. And I think through literature you can read a lot about that. I just read Doug Gilmour's latest book. Doug Gilmour is a famous Toronto Maple Leaf, and the trials and tribulations he went through playing in Toronto, I found very very interesting. And so, there's so much good sporting literature out there that you can read, and I imagine you're gonna have a great discussion about it today.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Mayor Brown, thank you for taking the time out today, and we hope we can be together next year in person in Brampton. Thanks to you as well, Sundeep, and we'll see you a bit later in the day. We're thrilled at the lineup of authors and participants who will be joining us today from Canada, the UK, and India to showcase their books and to debate some important topics in the world of sport. Sami Jo Small, an Olympic gold medalist and pioneer in women's hockey, will give us a sneak peek into her forthcoming and very honest memoir. We'll follow that up with a panel discussion about gender inequity in sport, led by CBC Sports host Anastasia Buxis. Then, one of the legends of CBC Sports, Scott Russell, will moderate a discussion that any fan of the beautiful game won't want to miss. Scott will be interviewing Stuart Horsfield, the author of 1982 Brazil, The Glorious Failure. That was a team considered one of the best of all time to never win. Session 4 will feature an anthology, The Best Canadian Sports Writing, and our moderator, Navneet Alang, a writer with the Toronto Star, will be speaking to the editors. I'm really looking forward to Session 5 as well. We're delighted to take you behind the scenes into the murky world of spot fixing. Nick Greenslades will speak about his new book about to be released, The Thin White Line, the inside story of cricket's greatest scandal. And we'll wind up the festival with a session with two Canadian athletes and authors, Kevin Rempel and Kristen Worley. They'll speak about lessons from their books about mental health, sport, and resilience. To kick things off in our first session, we're delighted to be joined by Sami Jo Small. Sami is an Olympic gold medalist and a 5-time world champion in women's hockey. While men's hockey gets most of the attention around the world and here in Canada, interest in women's hockey has never been higher. Interestingly, Sami Jo was studying mechanical engineering and was on a track and field scholarship at Stanford University, where she threw discus and javelin, when women's hockey was added to the Olympics. At the time, she was playing goaltender, moonlighting for the men's ice hockey team at Stanford, and she never expected what happened next. Her book is titled The Role I Played, Canada's Greatest Olympic Hockey Team. Sami Jo, welcome to the Ekamra Sports Literature Festival.
Thanks so much for having me, Teddy. I'm really excited.
Well, we are too. And I want to start by sort of setting the scene of your book. You begin with your experience as a walk-on. You were an unknown player trying to make that first Olympic women's hockey team in 1998. You give readers inside access into one of the most successful teams in sports history and take readers right there into the dressing room with such incredible honesty. I wonder, Sami Jo, if you could talk about that, why you decided to write this memoir and with such incredible honesty.
Well, I think I started, to be honest, I work as a professional speaker, and most speakers, the next step is you write a book. So I decided to write a book. This was about 10 years ago, right after the Vancouver Olympics. And, I started to put words down on paper that were very similar to my speech. And while I'm honest in my speech, it doesn't really do a deep dive into the real stories, into my teammates, into the personalities. And as I started to write, I realized that this wasn't just something for the back of the room, that this was something that really was needed in sports and in women's history, so that people knew about my teammates. I wanted them to know really who these women were. And, you say that I was an unknown prospect at the very first Olympics. Well, everybody was, because there was no Olympics really prior to that. There was a world championship team, but, people had played on all these different teams. Lots had played on boys teams growing up. So it was a matter for the coaches to really comb through the woodwork and find these women that played at an elite level. So that was kind of all of our stories. And I think that in sharing the honesty and in sharing the real events that happened, and I tried to be as honest as I could without sharing other people's stories. I mean, it is my story of how it happened. I didn't want to throw anybody else under the bus or anything like that, but I wanted it to be the real feelings that I encountered, because I think that those are events that we all go through. We all experience setbacks, failures, bosses talking to us in a certain way, that competition with others. We all experience that, and I think sometimes are afraid to talk about it. And I wanted it to be real. I wanted people to really connect, not just with myself, but with our team, and really understand the reasons why I think our team was so successful for so many years.
You share, and we're going to get into this a little bit in a couple minutes, but you share how sometimes it was hard to know your coaches. They didn't really talk a lot or didn't really say a lot. We're going to get into that, because when you talk about not knowing or not hearing from bosses and not knowing where you stand and that kind of thing, that is when we talk about honesty, there's a lot there that we're going to try and unpack a little bit. But before we get to that, you speak about Canada's national women's hockey team being one of the most successful teams in all of sports, not just women's history, but all of history. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, why you believe that?
For sure. So for those of you that are in Canada, I think most people understand that women's hockey in this country has really grown substantially, and the Canadian team has been very dominant for a long time, alongside the Americans. But for those of you that maybe are new to hockey, or this is outside of your realm, the women's hockey team essentially won the first 7 world championships, which those were only competed every 2 years initially. And then did not win the very first Olympic gold medal, which I talk about in the book. The Americans beat us in that very first game, but then went on to win the next 4 straight Olympic gold medals. So when I talk about success, it really is, that's what I define it as, is that they have continuously overcome the challenges and the barriers to be amongst the best. And we all often get slighted because people say, "Oh, there's only Canada and the US that are good in this sport." But the reality is that's how it started. But every other country now has put in money, has put in time, and that means that we need to constantly elevate ourselves as well. And so as the other countries catch up, Canada and the US really have just taken it to a whole nother level and continue to find new ways to train, new ways to encourage their athletes, and new ways to really scout across their countries as well. So women's hockey has seen an exponential growth since the very first Olympic Games, when we were kind of handpicked from across the country. Now there's a whole scouting system that occurs across the country where young girls are targeted from very young ages. It's starting to mimic men's hockey a lot more, and there's a lot more opportunities for girls as well. They can play on the provincial teams, the regional teams. They can go on to play for national teams, have college scholarships, and play professionally as well. So it's the growth that I have seen over my career has been just incredible. And you mentioned right off at the outset that I'm in places I never expected to be. It's not to say that I didn't expect to have these feelings from where I was, but I just never expected women's hockey to be in this position.
Well, I want to pick up on that, because you grew up like many female players, especially here in Canada. You were playing as the only girl on boys teams. What was your dream? I wonder if you could just sort of paint a picture of what your dream was early on with hockey, with respect to hockey.
So for sure, I grew up at the Norbury Community Center in Winnipeg, which is an outdoor rink. And I went essentially because my brother played street hockey. We played street hockey together. He allowed me to play with him and his friends. And when he started to play real ice hockey, I asked my parents if I could play real ice hockey too. And they were not hockey players themselves. And so I think because of that, didn't really see an issue with me playing. And they went down and registered me at the local community center. Once you put that helmet on, not too many people really know that you're a girl. And so I could play alongside my friends that I played street hockey with. And like most of them, I dreamt of playing in the NHL. I used to watch Hockey Night in Canada all the time. And I would draw pictures of the goalies and color their pads. And I was so fascinated with the sport and really fascinated with goaltending. And so I wanted to play for our local team, the Winnipeg Jets. And in fact, when I was young, probably 10 or 11 years of age, I got to be a junior Jets reporter with Robin Brown. I don't know if you know Robin Brown, but
absolutely.
that was one of my first experiences going to a Jets practice. And it was amazing. And I think for me, I just always dreamt about being there. It never crossed my mind that I was a female in a male dominated sport. I had the same dreams as my teammates. And I guess it wasn't really until my teenage years that I started to realize that probably wasn't going to be a reality. And because women's hockey wasn't, as prevalent, I played a ton of other sports. There wasn't that many opportunities for girls in hockey. So, I had the time to play all these other sports and the opportunities to play the local sports. And that's sort of how the next segment of my career happened. But I think no different than any little boy growing up in this country, I had those same dreams. And ultimately, I think I've ended up where I dreamt about being. It just is not with the Winnipeg Jets, unfortunately.
When women's hockey had that first world championship in 1990, some, especially here in Canada, will remember the team wore pink jerseys. Women's hockey was shortly after that added to the Olympics in 1998 and that became your dream. What did you visualize when you saw yourself at the Olympics?
So I actually dreamt about going to the Olympics for javelin. So when I envisioned myself at the Olympic Games, javelin and discus were my two events that I accepted a college scholarship to Stanford to do. And I fully visualized myself throwing in the summer games. That was the way I envisioned my dream. I was a full-time student athlete at Stanford, training, 3-4 hours a day while doing full-time school. It wasn't easy, but the way that I sort of dealt with some of the stresses that can happen at a school like Stanford is I moonlighted as you mentioned, on the men's hockey team. So we practiced twice a week, late at night. We had to make our way to the rink ourselves. We traveled, we played in the Pac-10, so we got to play the other major schools like UCLA and USC and Arizona and Washington, but it was never, there was no pressure. And I think because of that, my skills evolved and I just got to play. I just got to really enjoy it. And so while I didn't dream of going to the Olympic Games for hockey, I always dreamt about going to the Olympic Games. And in fact, when we were really young, my brother and I, my brother still became a swimmer, but we were swimmers and dreamt about, my very first Olympics that I can vividly remember, the Los Angeles Olympic Games, and just watching those athletes, and the swimmers were huge in our household. So knowing all their names and just wanting to be there. I didn't know what sport, I didn't know how. And in fact, my Olympic dreams in hockey didn't really start until my very first tryouts, because I think I just didn't understand the process. I was at school. I didn't, I knew that women's hockey had been introduced as an Olympic sport, but I didn't know, how you even got on that team or the way that happened. So it's not like I ever had these dreams of going to the Olympic Games for women's hockey. But I don't think that really matters, because I still had these dreams and I still really treasured the Olympic Games for what they represented. And I guess life just ended up working out at the right time for me. And I'm very cognizant of how many females played hockey prior to me that never got that opportunity. And you talked about the 1990 team. One of my all-time heroes, Susie Ewan, from a Chinese immigrant family, moved to Winnipeg and began her hockey career at the age of 18. She played on that very first 1990 World Championship team that wore the pink jerseys. And I got to meet her. She was 10 years older than me. And she really became my first mentor and my first role model. And I think many of those women that played prior to that first Olympic Games took that upon themselves to push the game forward, to encourage young girls to play and to normalize it. You know, had I not seen a female like her succeeding on the world stage, I'm not sure that I would have, you know, really pushed it to that next level. But I figured if she could do it, then we could all do it.
Now you end up in the book, you end up explaining the story of you end up on that team, the first Olympic team going to Nagano, but you're there as the third string goalie and you don't get a chance to play as the third string goalie. I'm wondering how you were treated as the third string. You mentioned a medal and potentially not getting a medal, even though you're on the team. I wonder if you could paint a picture for that, for people, of how you feel you're treated as somebody who's on the team, but maybe not particularly recognized as being a team member.
For sure. So I think, you know, I was the third goalie twice. So in 1998 and then 2006. So my very first Olympics, when I was asked to join the team as a third goalie, I was a rookie and I didn't know any different. So for me, I was just a rookie at the Olympic Games with these amazing, surrounded by these amazing women. And I was just excited. I was just, you know, I had the opportunity to get to have a front row seat to really my childhood dream. And here I was, almost like a tourist, but with a backstage pass that, you know, I got to be in the dressing room and train, and I got to do everything the girls did. And the team was really inclusive of me. Looking back at it now, it must have been really strange for them because they weren't really told much about my position. And I had been cut previously and then brought back. So I think many of them were sort of in the dark, but that didn't mean that they treated me differently. And like I said, I didn't really know any different. Fast forward to my third Olympic Games, where I was put in that position, I knew different. I knew what it was like to play in the games. I knew what it was like, you know, to have a game squarely on your shoulders. I knew what it was like to represent the country. And so that particular moment was more disappointing because I wanted to be in a different position. I wanted to be one of the goalies playing and, you know, felt like I deserved it. And I think every athlete that gets to the elite level feels like they deserve it. You don't get it unless you feel that way.
You're very honest, again, honest in how you portray that. I wonder if you could sort of share what you were feeling at the time. Let's go back to Salt Lake City, because you participated on 3 different Olympic teams. Salt Lake City, you write how you felt like you had proven yourself in the lead up to that. You felt you could have been the #1 goalie, but you weren't chosen for the final game. So you're there in the final. The team is about to have this historic game. How are you feeling at that time?
So I think it was difficult. You have a ton of emotions running through you because you prepared really a lifetime for this moment to play this Olympic gold medal final, and to be told that you're not playing is gut wrenching. And I think for anybody that's been in that situation where they're so close to what they really want and then are taken away from it, it's out of your control. And I think as an athlete, we have so many things within our control, our training, even, you know, when I'm playing in the game, I can control the game. But when you're chosen to not play, you can't do much about it. You can sit back and complain and whine, but that's just going to bring the team down. And I knew that, but that's the feelings I had. That's what I wanted to do. But I knew I couldn't. And I guess that constant battle of emotions inside yourself to support your teammates, and knowing that those are your friends and your teammates that you've been through an entire 4 years with, you want the best for them. And so you have these constant battles of emotion, and you know, you often are putting a smile on your face when you don't feel it, but you're trying. For me, I think what really helped in those situations was really trying to live vicariously through them, to really put myself into their shoes and find out what they wanted, what they needed, how they wanted to be supported. And I think had I not known my teammates so well, I wouldn't have been able to support them the way that they had needed or wanted. Some people like to have quiet and don't like to be talked to. Others like to have people to tell jokes. And so that became my role. And it wasn't a role I wanted to play by any means, but it was a role that someone had to play. Someone always has to play that type of role. And I took it upon myself to do it the best that I could, and to really put those emotions aside and deal with them later, not deal with those around my teammates who were about to go on their gold medal quest. So I tried to be the best teammate I could. And I think, like most people in that situation, it wasn't easy, but you just do the best that you can in that situation.
Well, a couple of the things that you write I found really interesting, Sami Jo. You talk about the biggest moment is also the moment of your biggest heartbreak. You never visualize not playing. My world no longer makes sense is one of the things that you write. And you also say it's gold medal day, but it doesn't feel like my gold medal day. And this took me back to what you talked about 4 years earlier, because people didn't realize when you were that third string goalie and you didn't get a chance to play, you didn't actually get a medal to take home with you. And people would ask you to see your medal, and you wouldn't have anything to show for it, and would feel a little bit awkward when people would say that to you.
Yeah, for sure. You, like I said, you go through these constant battles of emotion, and you don't want to have to explain it to everybody each and every time. But in men's hockey at the Olympic Games, the third string goalie received a medal for his efforts. And in women's hockey, the third string goalie did not receive a medal. And I didn't know that prior to the Nagano Olympics. I found that out on the gold medal day. But it was a reality. And so I didn't have a medal to show for my efforts. But did that make me feel any less a part of the team? For me, no. But I certainly was treated that way by the media, by at times even by Hockey Canada, as they were doing team events. The third string goalie was not included. So my teammates were always exceptional in including me, but I think I just often was forgotten, and not by any fault of anybody. I think it just was, that happens, and that happens to a lot of people in a lot of situations. Now that I'm a mother, I realize how often our roles are forgotten. But maybe that's what prepared me for what I'm going through today, is that, it really can't be about the reward. And I think that that's the message that the book hopefully will provide to people, is that it has to be about what you do each and every day. And every day you have to be proud of what you do, because you're the only one that's going to know. And I'm the only one that knew exactly what that role entailed. And, each and every time I tried to play it to the best of my ability. And the reality is there's times I wanted to go into the bathroom stall and just scream my head off, but I couldn't, and just needed to be there for others. And hopefully through this book, I share that messaging with people, that we all go through those situations. And there's times in everybody's lives that are difficult and hard. But sometimes putting your support into somebody else allows you to elevate yourself out of that sorrow.
Well, the picture that you paint is very, very vivid when you talk about that last Olympic experience on the team going to Torino, where you think you have a chance of being on the team, and then you're, again, as you pointed out, you find yourself as the third stringer again, and you get in your car in Calgary, and you end up driving. And for people who don't know this and can't picture this, you just kept driving until you ended up in another province. And you talk about how, the question that you had going through your mind is, how do you find strength in the face of such sadness? So I'm wondering if you could talk about that, what the answer is to that very pointed question that you were asking yourself.
For sure. I think that, when I look back on my sporting career, ultimately it was just sport. But that doesn't make it any less of a feeling. Our sports psychologists used to tell us that because it's important to you, that the feelings will be elevated. And so because it was sport and it mattered so much to me, when it didn't turn out the way I wanted to, I was devastated, and I didn't know how to go on, move on. So much of my life was wrapped up in who I was as a hockey player. And so when I found that news out, you're right, I drove all the way to Moose Jaw, which is not close to Calgary. And, part of it was embarrassment. Part of it was I didn't want to see my teammates, because I didn't want them to feel sorry for me. I didn't know even what I wanted. I didn't know how to be me without being that hockey player. And so I really had to sort of come to terms with all of that. And I guess really realize that it wasn't about me at that moment, that it was about being there for others. But that doesn't mean that the situation wasn't hard. And, you ask how you get past that. I think, what I try to tell people who are going through difficult situations is that it's okay. It's okay to feel it. That's the reality. And I think we all need to process and feel those emotions, and don't just sweep them under the carpet. If you need to feel those emotions on your own, then you need to be on your own, and you know what's best for you. If you need other people around you. For myself, I just needed some of my own time. And it's, when I finally made my way back to Calgary later that day and saw my roommate at the time, who was Jennifer Bottrell, one of my best friends, it was, you had to go through that moment with each person. It's almost like a death in the family. You need to go through that moment with each person, and then it becomes normal again. Then they start to treat you like normal. And so walking into the dressing room for the first time was difficult. Everybody, sorry this happened. Everybody has their canned phrases that they say in those situations. But you need to put yourself back into those situations, and it might take time. But eventually, I think what sport did for me was provided an opportunity to feel normal again. When I was back out on that ice, I could just be me again. And I always say to people, sport is not life, but it certainly can teach us a lot about life and teach us about how we react to situations and perhaps how we can improve the next time we go through something like that.
Sami Jo, how did these Olympic experiences change you as a person? Like, what did you learn about yourself through all this that maybe you take into being a mother now?
For sure. Yeah, I think I grew up super competitive, always wanting to be the best at something. And while I think I was a good loser growing up, it ate away at me. And it was so hard for me to be in those situations. Now that, I've gone through these moments in the Olympic Games, it's given me an empathy for people that have different roles to play on the team. I had grown up maybe having the role of, and I talk about it in the book, of being the power hitter on a volleyball team or the star track and field athlete. I had never really experienced the other side. And I think what the Olympics has taught me is that every single team has all those types of people on the team. And it's given me that empathy to know that everybody's situation is different. I don't think I would have had the time or the foresight to look around and really get to know my teammates had I always been the starting goaltender. I think I would have been a very different person, a very different type of leader. I can't say that I am glad that I went through the situations, but it certainly did teach me a lot about myself and how to hone in on my competitiveness and to be excited about other people's successes. That didn't come easy for me. I don't think it comes easy for a lot of people, but I really have made a conscious effort to see other people and to experience their successes with them, thank them for their efforts and everything that they do on a daily basis, because looking inwards, I think for me was a very natural strength, but looking outwards was not necessarily something that I was good at. And I think the role that I played on the team really taught me that I had to be better at that. And I think I got better as my time on the team progressed.
You sometimes hear stories of star players who go into coaching or management of hockey in particular, and they don't have the success that maybe some who are the grinders, who fight every step of the way have as coaches or managers. I'm wondering if that's something you can relate to.
For sure. I think that because I've gone through sort of every position within a team, I think it gives you a certain perspective, and I'm hoping that what it allowed me to do was to really understand the different roles that it takes to create a championship team. And I think I was, looking back at it, I'm so incredibly privileged and fortunate to have been a part of this incredible group of women that all came from different backgrounds, all had, we spoke different languages, ages from like 17 to 40, all in the same dressing room. Had I not played the great game of hockey, I would have not got that opportunity to meet these women. And that's what I take away from my experience on the team. And that's what I try to take into every future endeavor that I pursue, whether it's professional speaking or sports administration. I try to really embody the best of the women that I got to be fortunate to call teammates and also friends. That's the best part about having played on this incredible team.
There's so many great stories in this book, and I highly recommend it, Sami Jo. You talk about a teammate of yours at the last or at the Olympics in Vancouver who gave up her spot as the goalie to the third string goalie so that she could stand on the line on the blue line to collect the gold medal with the rest of the team. You talk about another defenseman who came back twice from giving birth and pregnancy in order to make the team, and people don't realize just how difficult that is. I highly recommend this book, not only for your story, but for some of the other stories you share about some of your teammates. Really well done, and thank you for taking the time today to share the insights and the great stories around this book. Sami Jo will be back with us shortly for more. You will actually hear more of Sami Jo's incredible story because she'll join us again to talk about the gender inequity in sport right now when it comes to gender. Sami Jo will join us for our next panel discussion on that. And of course, her book is called The Role I Played, Canada's Greatest Olympic Hockey Team. After her time on the national team, Sami Jo became one of the principals behind the Canadian Women's Hockey League, trying to help professional hockey get off the ground for female players. And as people know here in Canada, that league unfortunately folded last year. So I'm sure Sami will have lots to say in our next panel discussion, examining, as I say, gender inequality or inequity in sport. That's coming up in a couple of minutes here at the Ekamra Sports Literature Festival. So grab a coffee or your beverage of choice. Meet us back here in another 7 or 8 minutes for another great session. See you then.